This last year has been a very strong year for the mid-range Android segment. And the mid-range Android segment has always been a very fierce, aggressive market. And this year, what has happened is they've become so much more just well-rounded. There's no real downfall to them, and they stack up against flagships like they have never before. And if you're in the market for one, two of the best options are the Google Pixel 5 and the Galaxy S20 FE from Samsung. Both of these phones come in at $699, but they have a very different approach to how they get there. And it's just, they're very interesting phones to look at. So let's compare both of them and find out which of these phones is the better one and which one you should buy. Let's start off with the build quality, materials, and just what you get on the outside. The Pixel 5, weirdly enough of the two, is the one with the aluminum build, and this, the S20 FE, has the plastic build. The texture and everything on this makes it look like this is plastic, but this is aluminum, but it has a weird kind of coating on top, which I think they call some bio type thing. There is some coating on top of it, which I don't really like. It makes the phone feel cheap. However, it does have an IP68 rating, and overall the phone is pretty light. It's about 150 grams, so not bad at all. The S20 FE, it has this aluminum frame, so that is good. At least the core frame of the phone is aluminum, but this this back is plastic. And honestly, I don't mind. It's got this kind of matte finish to it, and with the color options you get, really it looks fantastic. This blue is something I really like, and I would love to see on more Samsung phones. It just looks awesome. It's as I was saying, it's deceptive. This really does feel very, very premium. This also has an IP68 rating, and it does weigh a lot more than the Pixel 5. It comes in at 190 grams, but this is also a much bigger phone too. If you look at it side by side, you guys will see this phone is just a lot bigger. Both of these have nothing too crazy. This is what the left side has. The right side, bottom, no headphone jack. Sadly, that's something that's a thing of the past, and pretty much a very simple build. Both of these phones have fingerprint scanners, but very different ones. This has a physical fingerprint scanner on the back of the phone right here. I have to say, the way it's implemented doesn't look that good. It's almost like just a cutout and then it's in there. Let me see if the camera will pick it up. It doesn't have that nice fit and finish. The S20 FE has a optical in-display fingerprint scanner, which is a lot more premium, I think, comparatively, but I do prefer the physical ones because they're just a lot more reliable and fast, and you don't have to worry about it. So of the two, I think that the S20 FE has a slight edge here, mainly because of how it feels in the hand. Both of them are, they have IP68, they have a lot of the same stuff, so not much of a big deal there. The only clear differentiation I could make was just this feels better in the hand. It just does, and this one doesn't. So it comes down to that. It's very much a subjective thing here, so they're pretty, it's the S20 FE. So let's move on to what you get and what you can get with both of these phones. So I can't believe I have to say this, but it is 2020. I'm sorry, it is 2021, and I have to. Both of these phones do ship with power adapters. The S20 FE comes with a 15 watt in the box, and this comes with an 18 watt in the box. Now, the S20 FE, you can get two storage options, 128 or 256 gigs. The 128 gig storage one will get you 6 gigs of RAM. If you jump up to 256, you'll get 8 gigs of RAM. This one only comes with 128. No higher options. You can't expand it, nothing. And it only comes with 8 gigs of RAM, no additional upgrades there. The S20 FE, though, it still has a micro SD card slot, so you can go up to 256, and beyond that, you can add in a micro SD card as well. It's got a hybrid SIM slot, so you could have 2 SIMs or a SIM card and an SD card, your choice. The S20 FE comes in 6 different color options. This is the Cloud Navy, and then there's 5 other colors, which are actually really nice. I do love the color options for this phone, and with the matte finish, they all look great. The Pixel 5 comes with only 2 color options. There's this green one called Sort of Sage, and then there's the black, which I think they call just black. So of the two, clearly the S20 has that edge as well. You get just more options overall on this phone. A lot more, for not only expandable, in terms of storage, but with colors as well. So I think the S20 has a clear edge. So let's move on and talk about the display. Now, both of these phones have AMOLED displays, so that means that they do come with always-on displays. Both of them do have it. Varying levels of information on both. And the displays on here, they have a lot of commonalities, but beyond, they are very different in many ways. So both of them do have OLED screens. The S20 FE has a 6.5-inch 1080p display. The Pixel 5 has a 6-inch, so this is 0.5 inches bigger. The S20 FE has a 120 Hz refresh rate display. The Pixel 5 has up to 90. Both of them have punch hole style displays. The S20 FE is smaller. The Pixel 5 is bigger, but the S20 FE has a very annoying silver ring around the punch hole, which unfortunately makes it look annoying, and it's a lot more visible and apparent because of it. As you guys can even see on camera right now, look at how apparent this is compared to this. Very, very clear difference. The Pixel 5 does stick to keeping the camera on the side. It doesn't have it centered. I don't know why everybody's doing their own thing. Why not just keep it in the center and keep, everybody's either on the side, the center, they're doing their weird things. Somebody on the left, somebody on the right. I really wish that would kind of become a little bit more standardized, not only for looks in terms, but even for software developers. Just makes things a lot simpler. So display-wise, since I really think that this comes down a big notch because of that silver ring around the camera, but I will say this has a bigger screen, it gets brighter, it looks a lot better than the Pixel 5, and it has a 120 Hertz refresh rate. So hardware-wise, it's not even a doubt. The S20 FE, again, is the winner here. And let's move on and talk about battery and charging. So the S20 FE, because it's bigger, of course, it has a bigger battery, 4,500 milliamp hours. And in my testing, I was getting around 6 to 7 hours of screen on time. Most days, under 6. Not 7 was a rare thing. 7 was a very rare thing, but this was again with 5G usage. The Pixel 5 has a 4080, so 4080 milliamp hour battery, and I was getting about 5 hours of screen on time. Again, this is with 5G usage. Now, the S20 FE is capable of 25 watt fast charging, but in-box is 15, I'll remind you. Wireless charging can be done up to 15 watts, and reverse wireless charging caps out at 4.5 watts. The Pixel 5, on the other hand, can fast charge up to 18 watts. That comes in the box, no more than that. Wireless charging only goes up to 12 watts, but the reverse wireless charging is just a hair bit faster at 5 watts. So not really a big difference, but it's good to see that both of these phones have wireless charging, reverse wireless charging. Charging-wise, they aren't crazy, but they get the job done. So just because the S20 FE has the bigger battery, I think it clearly wins this round out. And next, let's talk about the speakers. Both of these have stereo speakers, so the earpiece is the first speaker, and then the second one is down here at the bottom, and they both sound excellent. The S20 FE does get louder, and it does have a little bit more depth to it. The sound just sounds more complete. There's more, I can hear more of it, not just in terms of volume, but of the music, I can hear more on it. The Pixel isn't bad in any way. It just isn't as good as the S20 FE when you listen to them side by side. So I'll just give you guys a quick sample of both of these, and you can decide on your own. But I think the S20 FE is the clear winner here. Moving on, let's talk about something very, very important, and that is software. Now, the S20 FE and Pixel 5 both are running Android 11. S20 FE is currently running One UI 3.0, and One UI right now I think is pretty clunky. There's a lot going on. The organization has just become even more confusing. There's a lot to be done here. There's more ground to be covered. It's filled with bloatware right out of the box. I've showed this in my unboxing if you guys want to see exactly what you get. Multiple apps for the same thing, just not a clean experience. That's where the Pixel really shines. It's got a very clean experience, nothing too complicated. What you get is simple, but very, very useful, and things you'll get to use a lot. It has great features like, you know, it's got a call screening feature where if you get a call, you can have a Google robot pick up. It'll listen to the call and give you feedback. So if it's just a spam call, you don't have to pick up and deal with it. The system deals with it, and it's so much, you know, that feature is something I use almost on a daily basis. So Pixel's got, you know, not as much features. You know, the One UI just loads you up with great software features and things like that, but a lot of times they don't get used. But what the Pixels does give you, it's just awesome. And another thing, live dictation, you know, this has one of the best voice recording live dictations I've ever seen. It is instant and it is offline as well. So Pixel is, I think, in software just way, way better. It's got a clean UI. It's simple. Clearly not as many features as One UI, but what it has, it nails. So the winner of software is the Pixel 5. Moving on, let's talk about something that goes hand in hand with software, and that is performance. So let's talk about the hardware you get inside. So the S20 FE has the Snapdragon 865, which is the flagship chip from last year. It's got either 6 or 8 gigs of RAM, whichever one you buy. Mine has 6 gigs of RAM. The Pixel 5 has a Snapdragon 765G, which is a mid-tier chip, not a flagship chip, but it does still have 5G capabilities, and it's got 8 gigs of RAM. Both of these, as I said, they come with 5G, but the S20 FE doesn't have millimeter wave support unless you buy the Verizon version. And the Pixel 5 does have millimeter wave support, except it's only for the US model. So if you buy them out of the US, you're not going to get it either way. But millimeter wave support is there conditionally for both of them. And that's about enough about 5G. Let's talk about usage. So I've used both of these phones for a while. As you guys can see, they're set up very similarly for me. I like to have a kind of similar layout on all my phones. So overall, I haven't been able to find much differentiation between the two in real-world usages. My usage is multitasking with social media apps, texts, calls, things like that, emails, replying. Just mostly is social media is the biggest usage for me with my phones. And I'm not a big gamer, so I haven't done any gaming. I don't know what the gaming differences are like between the two, but from what I've been able to tell so far, the experience for me has been very equivalent. I haven't been able to find any differences. But I will say this, I have noticed that one place where the Pixel 5 will struggle is when you're taking a lot of photos in succession, one after the other. It will eventually, what happens is it starts to heat up and slow down because there's a lot of post-processing after every image is taken. And this isn't unique to the Pixel 5. Every Pixel I've had before this, even with flagship chipsets, would always kind of have this issue where they get bogged down when you're taking a lot of photos one at a time. And it's not something you notice all the time, but say you're outside, say you're traveling or something and you're usually taking a lot of photos, say you're just sightseeing or something and you're taking a lot of photos one after the other, it starts to kind of slow down. It'll make you wait before you can take another photo. That's the one place where I've seen a CPU limitation on this. Other than that, I really haven't seen anything else. And as I've said, the 865 is it's a tried and tested chip. I've used it through multiple phones through the last year, and I haven't had any issues with it so far, and I haven't really been able to find anything that would really give it any issues otherwise. So just a great chipset. It's clear that from a future-proofing standpoint, though, that the 865 is clearly the better option. So performance-wise, they both perform very equally, but just because the S20 FE is a little bit more future-proof with the 865, it takes this round as well. So moving on, let's talk about camera. Let me give you guys a quick rundown of the hardware on both of these. So let's start with the S20 FE. So this has a 12 megapixel main sensor. It's got an 8 megapixel telephoto, which is a 3x zoom, and it's also got a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera. The front has a 32 megapixel camera, which is capable of capturing video at 4K 60 FPS, and the back, of course, is able to capture 4K 60 FPS as well. The Pixel, on the other hand, isn't as endowed with its hardware, so it's got a 12 megapixel main camera, the wide, and a 16 megapixel ultra wide. That's it for the back. The front has an 8 megapixel camera, and it is only limited to 1080p 30 FPS, which is something that I'll talk about later in the video. But the back can do 4K at 60 FPS finally. It's not something that's always been able to do, but we do finally have 4K at 60 FPS. So with me giving you guys a rundown on the hardware, let's actually just look at some photos so you guys exactly know what the differences are like in the real world. So let's start off looking at the photos between these two phones with a pretty interesting photo here because it may look like there's not a lot going on. This is an overcast day, so there's actually a lot going on. There's a gray sky, there's these orangish buildings, there's green trees, and blue water. Now, one thing you will notice is throughout these two photos, detail seems to be pretty consistent, but there's a little bit more darkness to the tree, the branches on the Pixel 5 that the S20 FE doesn't have. And the Pixel 5 just seems to have slightly less dramatic colors. It just has more washed out colors, what it looks like when you compare to the S20. It's not actually washed out, that's more true to life. The S20 FE has brighter and more vibrant colors. Especially look at the water in the pool on the bottom left. It just looks very grayish on the Pixel 5, whereas it actually looks a lot more bluish on the S20 FE. Now, both of the photos are pretty good, but I think that appeal-wise, the S20 clearly, just because of that vibrance, looks better, but the Pixel 5 is more real to life. So if you were to, edit a little bit, tweak it here and there, you could get a very similar photo to the S20 FE, but the S20 FE just does it for you before you do anything else. So between these two photos, I think it's pretty clear that the Pixel 5 stays true to life, but the S20 FE just comes out looking a little bit more appeasing. Moving on, here's a shot of a sunset. I'm looking right into the sun, and this engaged HDR a little bit, but not a lot. So the main part you'll see it is right there near the sun. On the Pixel 5, it just seems to overexpose it a little bit. There's a little bit more nuance there with the S20 FE where it's not as overexposed, and you can see more detail in the clouds, especially around the sunset. Otherwise, both of these photos do a pretty decent job. The Pixel 5 does seem to do a better job of keeping more detail in the foreground, especially near the pool. You guys can see that if you look closely, you can observe the steps near the entrance of that pool where the metal handle is, the kind of rail. You guys can see the steps there a lot better than you can on the S20 FE, but both photos do a pretty good job. I think the HDR just handled the sunset a little bit better on the S20 FE. Moving on, this is a quick photo. This is a very interesting one because both of them have been taken very close up. I'd say like an inch or two away from this photo, from the flower itself. The colors on the Pixel 5 this time, weirdly enough, are not as accurate as the S20 FE. You guys can see that it almost blackens out this flower a little bit, whereas it's actually purple. So the S20 FE did a good job here. But the one place the S20 FE doesn't do that good of a job is if you look at the petals of this flower, they're so much more well-defined on the Pixel 5, especially since there's another white petal behind it. You guys can just see that, especially the petal towards the top left, it's so much more clearly defined on the Pixel 5. It just has more shadows bringing out those details. So the Pixel 5 does a good job with that, but the S20 FE does a better job with the colors. Moving on, here's a look at a telephoto photo from the S20 FE. This is a 3x zoom. Not the greatest photo, but it's not that bad either. The Pixel 5 doesn't have a telephoto lens, so this is just a digital 2x zoom. You can directly do it. It shows you 2x in the camera, but that's not a telephoto lens. It's just a zoomed in photo. And this is a now 30x zoom from the S20 FE. This is the maximum zoom you can get compared to the 7x zoom of the Pixel 5. Now, of course, when you look at it this zoomed in, nothing looks that great, but it's just cool that the S20 FE gives you that flexibility to zoom in and punch in that closely. If you did zoom in 7x or about 8x on the S20 FE, it just looks a lot better than the Pixel did, but it makes sense. It has a 3x telephoto lens. Moving on, let's look at the ultra-wide camera on both of them, and they actually do a very similar job on both ends. The one clear advantage the S20 FE has is it has a wider field of view. You guys can see there's just a little bit more in the photo than compared to the Pixel 5, but both do a pretty good job. Samsung does a little bit of the same thing by making the colors a little bit more punchy. You can see, especially with these chairs, these lawn chair type things, they are a little bit more vibrant in color compared to the Pixel 5. Moving on to the front camera. Now, this is where things are a little bit of a give and take. So I like the photo of the S20 because it just doesn't seem to orange out my skin as much. The Pixel 5 just seems to be doing something weird here. It is very warm, and there just doesn't seem to be as much detail as the S20 FE, but that makes sense because the S20 FE has a 32 megapixel sensor compared to the 8 on the Pixel 5. I will say this about the Pixel 5 though, it does a pretty good job with the field of view. It's a pretty wide angle, and it's a nice photo overall. Now, when we move to a portrait photo, here the S20 FE for some reason doesn't seem to look as good. The skin tone now feels way too washed out compared to the Pixel 5. Even though the Pixel 5 looks orangish, it still looks natural compared to the S20 FE. Everything else on the S20 FE photo I think is a little bit better, especially when it comes to detail. If you look at my beard, you'll see that the details on the hair are just a little bit better. Color-wise, both do a decent job, leaving out, of course, my skin. And the one thing I will say is that both of them are surprisingly good with the edge detection. I don't see any issues with the edges on either photo, and the bokeh looks a little bit better on the Pixel 5, but again, you can actually tweak these in post, so it's not really that big of a deal. Finally, let's move indoors and look at a low light photo without night mode. Both of them look pretty terrible. You can't tell any details apart. Honestly, they just both look bad. No real winner here. But when you do put on night mode, while the Pixel 5 image is brighter and there is a little bit more to be seen, it does mess with the colors a little bit. That Audi on the bottom right looks orange now than it red. And if you punch into the details of this Urus, you'll see that the Pixel 5 just doesn't have the same level of detail the S20 FE does. But these, again, every situation is a little bit different, and of all the testing I've done, they both end up looking very similar to each other. Finally, taking a look at the front camera in very low light with night mode turned on, and right off the bat, you'll see the Pixel 5 image is a lot brighter, and you can just see so much more detail on my hoodie and everything. But I will say this: when you start to zoom in on certain elements of the Pixel 5 photo, you'll see that they don't have as much detail. The S20 FE, even though the image isn't as bright, there is detail in the things you can see. So this is something that, is a little bit of a toss-up. I'm sure that if you mess with the S20 FE's photo in Lightroom or something, you can get a brighter image, but it just does seem to hold detail more. But overall, the Pixel 5 always, I've seen it seem to do a slightly better job with just keeping the photo overall brighter in low light situations on the front camera. That being said, let's look at video samples from both the S20 FE and Pixel 5 now. Alright guys, so this is the rear camera test of the Google Pixel 5 on the right and this S20 FE on the left. Now both of these phones are running 4K 60f, at least on the back camera for the time being. This is what the cameras look like. So a lot better with the dynamic range on both of them than the front camera. I clearly observed that. And this is pretty much what you're going to see with both of them. Audio right out of them, and details look pretty sharp. With the Pixel, you can digitally zoom. This is not an optical, this is just a digital zoom, but that's what this is. So again, this is the Pixel 5 on the right and the S20 FE on the left. Alright guys, so this is the front camera test of the Google Pixel 5 on the right and the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE on the left. Now, the S20 is actually doing 4K 60 FPS. The Pixel 5 is locked to 1080/30. There is nothing I can change. That is the maximum it goes up to. So a little bit of a disappointment on that term. No even option for 60 FPS on 1080 with the Pixel 5. So this is what it looks like. It's audio right from both of these phones. So right behind me is a little bit of a sunset going on there. So that's what dynamic range will look like. Pretty much non-existent on both phones. In the back there, but this is what it's like. This is the Pixel 5 again on the right and the S20 FE on the left. Alright guys, so this is a very cool feature on the Galaxy S20 FE right here on the left. That is live focus. So you guys can see it's actually actively blurring out the background a little bit to give it that deep bokeh effect. Now, it does, there are portrait modes on photos for both of these phones, but for videos, only the Samsung offers that. So that's a pretty cool feature. I just wanted to kind of demonstrate it side by side with the Pixel 5 to show you guys exactly what it looks like. So again, live focus mode, if you walk around, it is pretty much doing a very good job with tracking from what I can see on the screen. So again, S20 FE on the left with the live focus. So now that you guys have had a chance to look at the photos and video samples, let me just give you a quick rundown of this. And it's such a tough comparison. These two really keep up with each other. They just kind of trade blow for blow, and I just can't find any specific thing that one camera completely does better than the other one. They definitely keep up with each other in all aspects, and that's something I didn't expect. I really did think the Pixel 5 would kind of dominate in certain areas, but that's just a testament to how good Samsung's cameras have gotten recently. Samsung clearly has more hardware. They've got that extra telephoto camera that the Pixel is missing, and it's got a 3x zoom instead of a usual 2x zoom, and you can even digitally zoom up to 30x. So there's more flexibility there, and Samsung has a lot more software features built in as well, like live focus, pro modes. They've got a lot more variability, not to mention that the front camera is capable of doing 4K 60 FPS, whereas the Pixel 5 is limited to a measly 1080p 30 FPS. That's a very, very suspicious, it's just like, I don't know why it's so low. The Pixel did do kind of, a good job with a lot of things. Portrait mode is still something Pixel is very good at. Low light mode is, it's not as far apart as I thought it would be, but low light still is pretty good. And when it came to colors, the overall look and feel of them, colors were a lot more true to life with the Pixel 5. They almost look dull in a way, because Samsung just seems to usually add a little bit more vibrance, make the colors, pop a little bit more and contrasty. So the Pixel 5 has more true to life. The S20 FE has a little bit more of a processed image. So it really depends on which one you prefer. I know people who prefer both. Looking at it at first glance, though, I always like the more contrasty photo. And I think that's true for most people. So it just depends which one you prefer, but both of them are really, really good. And this is the most difficult category of them all, because it was hard for me to choose a winner, and I would have given this a tie. I think it was right at a tie until I realized that the S20 FE has an extra camera. It's got the telephoto lens, which is very helpful sometimes, and it's got a lot of software features that the the Pixel 5 doesn't. And the Pixel 5 is also limited with the front camera to only 1080 30 FPS, which finally sealed the deal and made me decide that the winner here is the S20 FE, just because it's such a well-rounded package with both the front and back cameras. And so with that, we have gone through everything I wanted to show you guys. And if you guys have been keeping score, the Pixel has lost to the S20 FE 7-1. It's crazy. The S20 FE just does so much right, especially with hardware. It just absolutely crushes it. It's a great phone. But I will say that this result's a little bit deceptive, because the one place the Pixel does win is software. And the other places it loses, let me just mention, it's not too far behind. It's very much a toss-up in so many places, but the S20 seems to barely beat it out in a lot of sections. So with software is where Google really shines. They've got a very clean, neat, and simple layout. They don't overload features, but whatever feature they do add, it's a lot more useful, and it's something that I find myself using more. One UI is not bad, but it's gotten a little bit worse than it was before. There's a lot more clutter, and the design just doesn't seem to mesh as well as it used to. I really think that there's a little bit of room for improvement with One UI. And when I compare the two, it's just the Pixel's experience is clearly the superior one. So hardware, the S20 FE, no doubt the better one. Software, the Pixel 5 is clearly better. So if it comes down to you as a person who, which one do you prefer? What is more important to you, hardware or software? I think for a lot of people, software is very important. So, kind of have to make your choice on that. I'll tell you this. I think most people should buy the Galaxy S20 FE. If you're comparing between the two, I think the S20 FE is amazing. It gives you so much value for your money, and you get so much. And it's a genuinely well-rounded package as a smartphone. You get a great screen. You've got it's a big screen too, so it's great for watching content. It's got great speakers. It's got a good camera system. Pretty big battery, which will give you a very good, respectable battery life. It's got 5G. It's got everything you want out of a phone, and a little bit more on top as well. The Pixel 5 is a little bit more of a different approach, where it has everything you need, but it doesn't give you too much more beyond that. So the software experience is really the only true standout feature with the Pixel 5 when I compare it to the S20 FE. And in a controversial way, if you asked me personally to choose between the S20 FE and the Pixel 5, I would take the Pixel 5 because of how well optimized that software is. I kept thinking to myself throughout this comparison, every single aspect the S20 FE was winning, but in my head I was still like, man, I think the Pixel is the phone I would use over the S20 FE, and it was weird to me how much software has kind of won me over there. So that's it for this one, guys. It's a very interesting comparison, I'll tell you that. It looks like one runs away, but to me, it's a little bit closer than that. So if you're in the market, as I said, go for that S20 FE. It's a fantastic phone. But if you like the clean Android experience, Pixel 5 might be the way to go. If you haven't already, guys, be sure to follow me on social media. I'll have all the handles right here on the screen, and of course, down in the description as well. And I have links to both of these phones in the description as well. If you want to check them out over on Amazon, that is my associates page. It helps me out a little bit if you guys do buy it from there, or just even check it out. No worries, go ahead and do that. I have links to it down in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll catch you in the next one.